Well, thank you everyone for coming and joining us and being patient. The ferries were running a little bit late. Straight in. Okay, I'm getting advice from a professional here. Karl Olsen, brothers for. We have to mention them. They're famous people in us. Giving us professional advice. I'm always either too far, too close, the wrong way.
Susan, you're great.
Okay, good. Oh, thank you. And I do have to say, I used to sing with these three people at this front table 35, 40 years ago. I'm giving away my age. I'm really only 25, so I don't know how that happened. Anyway. But we are here to talk about this beautiful whale who brought so many of us together over the last many decades. And I really just want to thank you all for being here. I want to first of all thank this beautiful woman behind the camera, behind many cameras, many video cameras, also behind many paintbrushes and computers who created this beautiful image of Tokitae for us. Karina has been, works for Orca Network, does many things. She's also working on our Toki's Legacy exhibit that will be at the Langley Whale Center. We'll be having an official opening of that in August. It will be a multimedia exhibit on our big screen there with history of everything Orca from way before the captures, through Toki's life, and all about our family and what people can do to help. So this mural is part of that. And thanks to Captain Kirk, who's here, Rich was here early. I don't know if he's already done. Okay. So the captain of the ferry, Tokitae, made the way through all the higher up and ups in the ferry land to give us a wall for this beautiful mural. So next time, if you weren't on board with us earlier, next time you are on the Toki, you will get to see Karina's beautiful creation the ferries have allowed us to have. And that is part of kind of an extension of our Toki's Legacy exhibit. And that whole exhibit was in part funded by the Washington Maritime National Heritage Area funding. So we're really excited about that. And just our ongoing partnership with the ferries, where we have ferry naturalist volunteers on board our ferries. We have several of those volunteers, I think, here. If you want to raise your hands, I know Dan, I know Bonnie, maybe has done that. So sometimes you get lucky and get to learn some things from volunteers on board the ferries. So we thank the Clinton Hall also for letting us be here. And Deb Lund and Karl Olsen and Vern will be joining us later for some surprises that we aren't even sure what yet. Knowing those three, you never know. So it will be exciting. And I want to thank Jalen. In fact, Jalen Sotelo, who is our development coordinator, who has worked so hard to make this happen. She has been working really hard, and I really appreciate all her efforts. And we have a few, Stephanie Raymond, she's probably working in the back. It's working really hard as well, our program manager, and Cheryl Payne in back, our finance director. We have several board members here, Fred, Sarah, who else do we have here? Howard. And I have a lot of sleep, so I'm sorry if I'm missing anybody. Lucy is back there. Yes, Lucy Miller from the Langley Whale Center. Who's keeping things hopping there. It's been really busy and selling some fine goods from there. And she has been working really hard on the Toki's Legacy exhibit as well. So I just, and then Cindy Hansen helped us set up the whole ferry thing today, and has been working on helping make this happen too. So I really appreciate all our hardworking staff and volunteers, many of who are here today, that we couldn't do all that we do without, because that's what makes it happen. And I have to say that it was Deb Lund who came to us, it had to be before 2012, with the idea to name the ferry Tokitae. And she said, but I don't want to do it, I want you guys to do it. and we did it, and now it's been, and it worked. And so now everyone knows it inside.
Which ferry is that? Where does it go?
Right here.
Right here. Is this one right here?
Yeah, it's the Clinton Muckleteo run. Yeah. Yeah. So.
Thank you. Sorry.
It's all our fault. All our fault. So I will, and I found out today Captain Kirk, who helped make the mural happen, actually saw the captures. So we know why his heart is so into this. And he lives on Whidbey. And he told us today he agreed to doing an interview that will be part of the Toki's Legacy exhibit that's going to be at the Web Center. So that's going to be really cool because it will really draw the Langley Whale Center exhibit and mural together to have the ferry captain talk about him seeing the captures. So every day we meet new people who, through Toki, we're connected. It's still happening. So I will, and I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Susan Berta with Orca Network, and this is Howard Garrett. I'm co-founder and husband. So I will let Howard talk about a little bit of the history of
Any questions? I was hoping for questions, so I'm going to make this up. Well, to talk about Toki and her legacy, it's good to give a brief rundown of how this whole campaign started. On March 9th, 1995, the governor of Washington, the Secretary of State, Ralph Munro, and Ken Balcom, founder, director of the Center for Whale Research, held a press conference at the Daybreak Star Center in Seattle to announce the beginning of a campaign. They had charts and graphs. They had all the networks, radio, print, everything. And they announced the campaign to bring Toki home, Lolita. Nobody really called her Toki until later, except in Miami. Everybody did. But then the next day they went back to their day jobs and there was no campaign. So I said, I'll do the campaign. You can't start a campaign like that and then go away. So I started a campaign. I started a nonprofit organization called the Tokitae Foundation. And very quickly, I found Susan, and Susan found the campaign and wanted to be part of it, and I wanted her to be part of it. So she became a board member and a co-founder. And then a few iterations went by, and in 2001, we restarted as Orca Network. But we never lost a beat as far as campaigning for Toki. And when we do that, this is about her, but it's about her legacy. So it's about what have we learned, and where do we go from here? what does our love for her lead us to do? And a lot of it is right there. Karina put it in this little paragraph, that it's her way of bringing people together. You could call it empathic outreach. The way she seemed to, without words, but with only her body language and her looks, she drew you in. I've heard this from so many people. And she engages, she leads interactions, she splashes, she kind of looks, she plays little games. She does things to engage and to make you into her friend, her companion. And that taught me so much. I learned that partly from a 1995 documentary called Lolita, Spirit in the Water, where a trainer, who is a trainer by name only because she was her companion, and she said, visiting Toki every day is like going to see your best friend who understands what you're going through. And she just had this feeling, this sort of nonverbal mutual empathy that changed her life. We're still in very close touch, and she's always dedicated to Toki and her legacy. But that taught me about her, but by extrapolation, her family. That's the way Southern residents live. They show each other that affection all the time, that bondedness, that closeness. That's their nature. That's their real inner nature. And that, I think if more people understood that that's going on all the time. They're socializing, they're rubbing around on each other. I don't know how many of you heard about the paper that was just published in Current Biology Journal by the Center for Whale Research about, they call it allokelping, which is, and it's only discovered because they got high-resolution cameras on their drones last summer, and were able to see that they snip off a length of kelp, a couple of feet, and they place it between their bodies, and then they roll up and down with that kelp in between. That nice, soft massage up and down their bodies. And that's not, an isolated incident. They've now recorded dozens of times that they do that. And that shows you. I mean, it's sort of an innovative way of, you could call it grooming, but it's how they live. Their associations are not just, reflex or some kind of instinct. It's their culture. It's their tradition. It's how they want to be together. So if people do that, if more people sort of understood them on that level and saw that they're really such caring, affectionate, empathic beings, they couldn't do the things that they do, and we wouldn't let them starve. We need to help them. Her legacy is she loved her family, and we love her family. And we need to do whatever we can to help her family. So, shall I read from Sandra's book first, and then you can?
Yeah, we'll read Sandra's first.
Sandra Pollard can't be here today, but she wrote 2 books. A Puget Sound Orca in Captivity and Puget Sound Whales for Sale, both of which are available at the Langley Whale Center, of course.
And back there.
And they're back here.
Oh, and back there. And she gave us a couple of excerpts that she would like read. So I will read them. And, they're heart-wrenching in part. But this is sort of how people acted toward them. This was condoned behavior at the time. Nobody, at first it was a surprise. It was so unheard of to round up whales and capture them for them to do tricks in marine parks. But we learned. But at any rate, hearkening back to that capture in Pin Cove, she says, the last helpless victim to be taken away to a new life far removed from her family was Lolita, also known as Tokitae, the only surviving southern resident still alive in captivity. Pixie Maylor, a resident of Oak Harbor, recounted, there was a bunch of us who went down every day, and it's the worst thing that I've ever seen in my life. It should never have happened. The whales cried. We watched them load them and saw them specifically load a small one in the back of the truck. I think it was probably Lolita. And she cried and cried and cried the whole way. It's a sound you don't forget. You just don't. I'll never forget it. And many years later, Carrie Tremaine, one of the divers, hired to assist the capture team, who was paid $75 a day during the most intense stage of the capture, described how the calves cried as they were forcibly separated from their mothers. Despite their fear, the mothers' deep maternal instincts dictated the action they needed to take to save their precious offspring. Tremaine witnessed a female nuzzle against her calf, an attempt to force off the tight noose encircling the calf in a vice-like grip. He described it as an act of beauty, bravery, intelligence, and athletic ability. The mother's efforts to rescue her calf failed. While she watched, the calf she had nurtured was lashed to the side of the captured pen. Trapped and alone, the calf watched and waited as the netting at the end of the pen was opened to release the larger adults, while the rest of the distressed whales circled and milled nearby, trying in vain to gather their fractured family together. The calf's mother kept vigil near the captured pen, repeatedly spy-hopping in a desperate attempt to maintain contact with her offspring, calling and calling in the pod's unique dialect. All the time, the helpless calf, in confusion and fear, cried to be reunited with her mother, a sound Tremaine and others will never forget. That calf was probably Lolita, a member of the southern resident L-25 subclad. She, like her presumed mother, ocean son, L-25, has displayed the same attributes of beauty, bravery, intelligence, and athletic ability, enduring over half a century of enslavement, mostly alone. And then she gives me one short little snippet of the time that Ralph Munro was organizing every legal maneuver he could to end the captures forever in 1976, after they witnessed the captures. And we have Karen Munro, now Karen Munro-Ellick, her write-up about that. But this was just a short little interchange with a bail bondsman. Ralph arranged bond for the whales. They had been captured, and there was so much media and so much attention that they couldn't continue, but they didn't let them go. They kept them trapped there, and they wanted to finish up and deliver them. So Ralph called a bail bondsman and said, "Dave, this is Ralph Munro." I re-identified who I was because I wasn't sure he remembered me. "I know who you are. You were that troublemaker at Western Washington College." I started laughing on the phone and said, "Well, I need a bond." He said, "What's wrong? Someone in jail?" I said, "No, we need a bond for 5 killer whales." Then he started laughing. How often do you call a bail bondsman for a bond for 5 killer whales? But it worked. We got him out. So, you want to read Karen's?
Yeah, I can start.
Oh, man.
Or maybe Karl would like to read
Yeah.
words of this.
Yeah, I think I can start.
Actually, my voice is
So-
kind of good one, so.
Well, you can go ahead. One of the things, and some people may not know, Ralph Munro was the former Secretary of State of Washington for 20 years and was very gregarious. And one of the things he was known for, and his memorial was yesterday and it was televised, and you can, if you Google it, you can find the recording and watch it. And I was watching it when I was putting these slides together, and we've been in touch with his former wife, Karen, and the current Secretary of State made a comment that is something that was so close to what I say about Toki all the time, was that Ralph was known for bringing together people from different sides of the aisle, or different people from different parts of the world, or people who normally wouldn't talk to each other, and getting them to work together and agree on something and work for solutions together. And I've always thought of Toki doing that, and that's something that I hope with Toki's legacy project, that's something we can continue doing for the southern residents and orchids all over the world. Because Toki brings together, has brought, even in her death, she has brought together so many people. And at the end, if you looked at the people who were working together to bring her home, it was, it was a crazy group of people that you would never think would be working together on her behalf. And I remember in the early days, at a gathering at the Captain Whidbey, we were in a circle with, Republican commissioners and senators and, I don't want to use the term hippies, but people with drums and smudge sticks, and feathers and smudging, and I just looked around the room and I thought, how else would all these people be in this room together in a circle for this one whale? And so it just really hit me how similar Ralph and Toki were. And I hope they're having fun together wherever they are, swimming together. I would not doubt that Ralph is swimming with his namesake J6, Ralph and Toki. So Karen was busy. She spoke at the memorial yesterday, and she sent us what she wrote and what she spoke there. So that's what we're reading. And this is about how they got involved and were basically instrumental in stopping the captures and keeping SeaWorld out of Washington State. Sunday, March 7th, 1976 was an unusually warm spring day in Olympia, and Ralph and I were heading out of the harbor on a friend's sailboat. 6 of us were looking forward to a relaxing afternoon in the sun. Then we saw a pod of orcas being chased by 2 large boats, a trawler and a gill netter, and a speedboat with a seaplane nearby. We realized it was a SeaWorld capture crew, which had already taken 67 young orcas from Washington waters. They sold them to marine parks around the country and overseas, including Australia and Japan, for $20,000 or more. Bill Oliver, our boat's captain, tried to get his boat between the orcas and the capture boats, while the men yelled and threatened us, saying, "We have permits and we're legal, you blankety blanks." The orcas started to escape, but the seaplane taxied back and forth, and 2 men on the speedboat threw seal bombs, small explosives, into the water. They drove the terrified animals into the shallow bay and threw nets around them. We were all very upset, but Ralph said, we're not going to stop them. But we have to focus, watch and remember everything they do. It may be important later. So we watched the horrible scene for a few hours as the men separated the young orcas, which they wanted, from their family members, prodding them with long poles and screaming at them. The anguished cries of the orcas were heartbreaking, especially as mothers and calves were separated. The freed orcas did not leave. They kept circling the nets and continued to cry back and forth. We were all very depressed heading back to shore in the late afternoon, but Ralph and I decided our best bet was to contact friends in the press. Early the next morning, Ralph picked up the Seattle PI and yelled, "We won round one. Mike Layton has written a hell of a good story." Television crews came to Olympia and filmed the orcas in the nets. Soon it was a big news story and crowds of protesters came to the harbor. SeaWorld's timing for this capture was quite bad because Ralph was on the staff of Governor Dan Evans and we were friends with Attorney General Slade Gorton. Ralph contacted Evans and Gorton and they agreed the situation should be investigated. Slade Gorton assigned 3 of his assistant AGs to study SeaWorld's permit. They found a key provision which had been violated. The orcas were to be allowed to swim naturally and not be forced to go in a certain direction. Also, the animals were to be treated humanely. Washington State filed suit against SeaWorld on March 10th, and both sides presented their cases at the federal courthouse in Seattle, with many observers watching anxiously. Did you have anything to do this? Or Karl? Karl?
You can
keep going.
Go ahead too.
Uh,
If you want to read, I'll read it.
Okay. The 6 of us from the sailboat submitted affidavits about what we had seen, as did many people who lived on the shoreline between Tacoma and Olympia. They said they had seen a pod of orcas swimming fast ahead of 2 large boats and a speedboat which seemed to be chasing them. The legal arguments went on for several days, in and out of court. SeaWorld had an army of lawyers and public relations people. At one point, it seemed that we had triumphed, but SeaWorld won an appeal and the hearings continued, while the orcas were still in the nets in the Olympia harbor. However, the SeaWorld personnel were becoming concerned about their public image, and some negative information was coming out about previous captures, including the drowning of 4 young orcas, which they had tried to cover up, and that was in Panko. Finally, on March 23rd, SeaWorld signed an agreement that they would release the orcas and never again attempt to capture them in Washington waters. The courtroom erupted with joy. And at the memorial yesterday, everybody cheered as well, and Karen kind of giggled. Ralph and I often talked about these events over the years and agreed that the capture and trial were among the most significant events of our lives. We met people who became lifelong friends, and we tried to help their efforts to save the endangered southern resident pods and free Tokitae from the Miami Aquarium. Sometimes the released captives were seen in local waters. One female named Wake and numbered T46 was seen often until 2 years ago. And she was one of them in the Bud Inlet capture, which is the one that they had stopped. She is now deceased, but has 27 descendants who would not have been born in SeaWorld had succeeded. On March 20th this year, the day Ralph passed, Wake's granddaughter, T46B, was first seen with a new calf. Ralph would have been very happy about that. And that's the kind of thing that gives you goosebumps. And those things seem to happen in the orca world. And then, we have this video that we'll start over where Ralph talks about another instance where orcas seem to know things they shouldn't know. Kind of like when Toki was dying and her family in San Juan's it's named after him, Ralph. And when J6 passed away, it was when the southern residents were becoming threatened. And he did a press conference at Limekiln, and he talks about that experience in this video, this short video. So let's see if I can find it and start it again.
Restarting this video.
Yeah.
It's interesting. If you've never had an animal look you in the eye like J6 looked at me, it's the experience of a lifetime.
We started
And I don't know who intervened in that meeting, if it was the animal or me or God, but there was a connection. And I was heartbroken when J6 died. And but the remarkable sensitivity, you know, I'm not a dreamer or out there in La La Land, but I'll tell you, this species has a remarkable connection to us in weird and mysterious ways, and I've seen it happen myself. One example that we laugh and talk about and enjoy remembering was during the years that so many whales were dying and we weren't sure what was killing them and why they were dying, and no one was really paying any attention, and the pods were diminishing. This was after kind of the capture era, but there was just a lot of whales being lost. And so we wanted to call some public attention to this. By this time I was Secretary of State, and I told my staff, we're going to go to San Juan Island, we're going to have a funeral for the whales. And they thought I was crazy nuts, but I said, no, I think it's worth it. Let's go talk about how many are dying. And I remember that day when we got to San Juan Island, that I stopped to see Ken Balcom and some others, and they said, you know, Ralph, there haven't been any whales around here for, I think, 3 or 4 weeks. And he said that they just haven't been here. And there's none in the area that we know of. And so you could have your little press conference down there and so forth, but I don't think you're going to have a chance for the press to get any pictures of whales, which we kind of hoped for, but we said, well, okay, that's a remote chance, and it probably won't happen. And it was interesting, about an hour before the event, Malcolm called me, and Ken called me, and he said, Rob, we've just seen the whales coming across on the southern end of San Juan. And he said, looks like they're heading north towards you. And I thought he was kidding me. I kind of laughed and said, yeah, right, Ken, you know, that's not going to happen. And it was very interesting. We were there at Limekiln, and I had my back to the kind of facing to the crowd, and the cameras were all focused on me. And suddenly I looked up and I was speaking just briefly there to open the press conference, and suddenly I saw all the cameras just swing away from me and right out to the bay. And there they were. And it was J-Pod, and they were leaping and jumping, and it was because we were there, and I believe that in my heart. And I think that they knew that people were standing up for them. That's something that I know will be hard for a lot of people to comprehend, but there are so many other examples. You hear of examples around the world. Australia, where whales have led stray fishermen back to their port, or things that happened here in a similar fashion. And these whales were just frolicking and jumping and breaching, and we couldn't believe it. But we got the attention we wanted on the species, and we brought attention back to the fact that we had a real problem on our hand and we had to figure out. So what's all this led to? Well, it's led to no captures, and it's led to, a different attitude towards the animals, and a lot of those little kids that learned to love whales at SeaWorld, even though I don't like SeaWorld, they went to SeaWorld, they learned to love whales, and they come home and they don't want anybody to touch them. Leave them alone, let them swim free. And they become our allies. The little kids have those as they grow up, especially. But I want to say that one of the things we've learned is that there are family groups, and there are no question they're family groups. We watched in the capture operations in Bud Inlet, and I was only about 60 feet away, 70 feet away. And you could tell mothers and siblings, some were in the net, some were outside the net, screaming back and forth at each other. And I will probably hear those screams in my head the rest of my life. I can still bring them up if I want to hear them. And it was gruesome. It was awful what we heard. And we had no doubt in our minds that there were families there. And with Lolita or Tokitae, there's a family here. And I truly believe that that whale could be rehabilitated and brought back to be and hopefully live out its life right here. And so much could be learned. So much could be learned. And unfortunately, the Miami Sea Aquarium won't cooperate with anything. They won't let us cooperate on medical research or on blood samples or anything. And that's a shame because that hurts the entire species. So it's been quite a journey. Now there's not just a few people involved, there's thousands of people involved all over the world. And the job that everyone has done, and Howard and Susan are my heroes, Ken Bowden's my hero, Paul Splung's my hero, and so many others who have just carried out this work and carried out these efforts and made for a better world for all of us, and a better place for all of us to live. So time marches on, but people have to replace us, people have to carry on this work, people have to do this job. And they will, and we'll protect this species, and we'll be one of the few places in the world where somebody can say, well, I'm glad they stood up for them years ago, because today it's a better place. Times have changed. I'm old enough to remember traveling down the highway between Seattle and Portland, and there were probably 2 or 3 home zoos along the way. And you could stop and you could go in these dark rooms and see the snakes in the glass boxes, or you could go out and look at the animals out in a fenced-in area. Times have changed. You go to Woodland Park today, you don't see cages. Go to the other major zoos of the world, you don't see cages. You see an environmental difference that where animals and species are protected in their own environment, and if they do come into captivity, are kept in as natural a setting as possible. And I'm sorry, but these sea parks and sea circuses and so forth, they don't meet that standard. These whales should not be kept in a tank. And they can say they rotate them and so forth, but they should not be there. They should be rehabilitated into the wild. And it's going to be a tough job, but they've made one whale of a lot of money off them, so it's time that they took the opposite approach and paid back the species. The species lives on, and the other people, the other whales in that pod live on, and that's what we've got to protect. But the interesting point is that every single governor and every single leader in our state's wildlife department and so forth from day one has been supportive. Every single one. And many of our federal leaders have been very supportive. Our federal representatives, our state representatives, didn't make a bloody bit of difference if they were Republicans or Democrats or Libertarians or whatever they were. They were supportive, and they helped us. And it is interesting, I have not been in public office now for 21 years. And I still have people We went over to Bainbridge Island for the 4th of July, and we were opening up my house, and my dad's old house. We stay in as a vacation house. And this guy came by on a bicycle. I'd never seen him. I had no idea who he was. And he stopped and parked his bike, and he walked up in the front yard and said, "Are you Ralph Munro?" I thought, oh, shit, this guy's mad about something. What's he mad about? And he said, you know, he practically had his finger in my chest by this time. And he said, "I just want to thank you for saving the world. I've been waiting 20 years to thank you." He was very, I'm not making fun of him, he was very sincere. But it means a lot to people, and we've got to continue the work.
These are the funniest animal videos ever.
Ralph Munro is someone who was truly changed by orcas. He was absolutely dedicated. He came to every function we gave, and like this. He would be here if he could, I'm sure. And let me just give you one example about how he saved our butts. I mean, it was incredible. This was in 1995. We'd just gotten the Toki campaign off, started, Keiko was still, you know, stranded in Mexico. And so a couple of friends of mine and I decided, okay, let's have a big rally in downtown Seattle. So we rented an old Longfellow's Hall or something. We put up 50 chairs, and we got a band, and we had refreshments and everything. And at the appointed hour, nobody showed up, except the media, King 5, Como, Cairo, cameras, all there, and Ralph. So, on the evening news that night, it was Ralph Munro saying those things, that those whales should never be in captivity. And that's what this is about. And we're going to save Lolita, and we're going to save Keiko. And that was what everybody saw that night. They didn't know that it was a total flop, but nobody came. So I have been forever indebted to Ralph from that and dozens of other times. He did recruit every Republican in the counties around to come to our events. He was just totally dedicated, and I think he was awestruck. He was blown away by whales from more than one occasion. That J6 story at Limekiln was one you just have to keep shaking your head, because how do they know? But that's not the only instance. There's so many times when they seem to know things that they shouldn't know. They've somehow overcome the law of physics.
Yeah, it was when
That last photo in the slideshow was him sitting on the rocks after that event at Limekiln. And I've never, I said that to Karen, and she said, that is a rare photo of Ralph by himself, because he was always surrounded by people and never sitting quietly like that. And I think it was just afterwards it hit him what had happened, that, and I don't remember now if he said how it, at that event, J6's sister breached, J8 breached 6 times while he was talking. I mean, that's one of those coincidences that you can't, you know, yeah, well, that was a coincidence. She did it exactly when he started talking about J6. Exactly. So that's how it was. And Ralph got it. Anyway, yeah, exactly. So that's just, And other people can read minds just like whales. Maybe it's when you've been too long. I mean, a long time. Not too long. But we were going to say, and Jalen wants to say a few things about our raffle, because I forgot to bring up one of our wonderful volunteers, Barbara French, has done. But also we're going to take a break to get some food and stretch while Deb and Karl and Vern set up. And Jalen will tell you about this amazing raffle that we have going.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you all again, everybody, for being here. We are so grateful to have all of you here. So we're going to take a 5-minute break, so come back 5:50-ish. But while you're on your break, does anybody want like a free weekend trip? I mean, I know everything's stressful. If you do, check out the raffle over at the back counter. We are selling bracelets, and when you buy a bracelet, you get a raffle ticket. You can also just do a raffle ticket if you want. There are one for $10, and there's other prices listed as well if you'd like to go big or go home. And so it's a great opportunity to get a little weekend trip if you're not from the island up in Penn Cove, thanks to one of our board members, Barb French. And so I really encourage you all to check it out. You can also pick up some bracelet kits to take home and make. So I will stop talking so you guys can go check it out. Also the Toki memory book, if you haven't had a chance to sign it, check it out. And the back table will have some stuff from William Wilson for sale. Enjoy your break. We'll see you back here soon.
We are so lucky. We are blessed. We are so fortunate to have the Olsen brothers, Vern and Karl and Deb Lund, who have been with us since before we were here. From the start, from the very beginnings, and the beginnings of the beginnings, and before that, Deb and Karl and Vern were in the campaign. And now, because they are musical geniuses and professional musicians and storytellers, they will now do a rendition of a rally song that I'm telling you can raise your spirits. I remember one time I was on a boat off San Juan Island, and we were just looking for whales and scanning the horizon, and another boat came by and going the other direction, and as it approached, I heard Vern's golden tones singing, "Come home, Lolita, Lolita, come home." I had no idea he was out there that day, but it was music to my ears, to say the least.
All right. Thank you, Howie.
Vern and Karl and Deb will now bring Lolita home.
Hello?
Okay, this is the original song, a song that we sang to and with a lot of kids and adults, but hundreds, actually thousands of kids in the 3 different schools that we taught for 4 decades.
Very good. Bird song. Come home, Lolita.
Your heart is here to greet you. We'll help you freely roam.
in Minnesota, and you know, I did grow to love what nature was there, and you know, took my summer school nature kids up for weeks at an environmental learning center where they got to track wolves and do stuff like that. But you know, I loved those wolves, but they're not orcas. The year before I moved here, Minnesota State mandated that every school in every district in Minnesota integrate environmental education into every existing subject matter. And so I and another teacher led up that job for our district. It was the perfect combination because we were the exact opposites on the Myers-Briggs personality profile. And if you don't know what that is, maybe our master's degrees will give you a little hint of how we were opposites. Her master's was in curriculum development. Mine was in applied liberal studies. So she planned out all the structure and process, which she loved, and I got to come up with all the nature-related activities and information to weave into the things that were already happening in the classroom. So we were both in heaven about that. And when the state reviewed all of the district curriculums in the state, we got the Best in State award. And it was like, for me, it was play. You know? It was like, how do you tweak this? You can put in some environment stuff. So then the next year I end up here because of these two guys. If Vern hadn't gotten me together with Karl, I wouldn't be here.
Collusion.
But the three of us were all teaching in Oak Harbor, and I had started an environmental club, you know, using some of the same activities and information I worked on in Minnesota. But the club took over the job of starting recycling in schools there, which Vern was also doing in his school at the same time. And but it, you know, it was always about the kids with all of that. But then, once I started learning about orcas, and especially that first-hand account from Vern, who was there at the capture in 1970, and then it's like it became more personal, especially when my good friend and singing and recorder playing buddy, Susan, got into me, and then I became as much of an eager student as my students were. So, as I said, we sang this song many years for kids, and one of those young kids who sang with us at protest and capture reunion events led by Susan and Howie near the capture site was a little girl named Bonnie Swift, who learned about Toki from me when she was 8 years old. So now, decades later, not now, but then decades later, Bonnie created the Audible original, Tokitae, The Quest to Bring a Whale Home. If you want to know Toki's whole story and hear from all the voices that made so much of it possible, check out her, check that out. Bonnie says that I inspired her, but I know she actually inspired me more. And so we've already heard Susan mention about the ferry contest and how I called Susan and Howie and said, it's got to be the Tokitae. You know, they keep going back and forth, Tokitae, Tokitae. And but I wanted them to submit it so that Orca Network could be listed and get the recognition for that. And it worked. So, and we were there at the christening, and we were there today for the new Toki mural, which is amazing. And now we're here. And I'm going to turn it over to my brother-in-law because, you know, he was there and has a couple things to say.
Your elder.
Vern has on the vintage shirt.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
I still have mine.
just had a mouthful of popcorn. That's okay. This afternoon brings about a lot of memories, especially when you think of people like, is this okay? Can you hear me back there? Go back there, or yeah, I sometimes don't like to use a microphone if possible. People like Wally Funk. Now, that name probably doesn't mean a lot to a lot of you, but he was the publisher of Whidbey News Times way back. He took all the pictures of Tokitae, and all the pictures that are here are probably Wally's pictures. Several things that happened during that. I could tell you story after story about Wally and SeaWorld and some of the combat between the groups. It was pretty special. But when he passed away, he donated all those pictures to the Island County Museum. And you have now, in Langley, the museum in Langley has just combined with the Island County Museum. They are now one. They used to be one, they separated, and now they're back together. You can go and you can check out, if you want a picture, you can get one of those pictures through the Island County Museum. And I've seen them give pictures just for free. Just go in and get them and they'll print it up for you. So that's really a neat thing there. So that's a special one there. But Ralph Munro, man, what a man. We had one thing that's not in my speech also, that Governor Mike Lowry decided in the early 90s, not to, or to decide that this would become a state project. And he made it into a state project, and our schools all learned. I taught the Lolita song to all of the elementary schools, kind of not in person, but knowing Karen Munro in South Whidbey, knowing Karl in Cookville, knowing Deb in Cookville, and also in Hillcrest up, and I was up there. I taught it to all the kids, and so it became something that the kids could sing that song anywhere, and they were very involved. I believe that music is missing now. We don't have a lot of singing together and sharing with that, and we are united through song, and I feel we have to bring that back somehow. In August of 1970, I was part of a Seattle Pacific College summer teaching program at Camp Casey up in Cookville. The classes finished up on Friday, August 7th, 1970. When another staff member, Joe Brown, she came in and said, "Hey, they're catching killer whales on the other side of the island." So at the end of that day of teaching, I went over to there and drove over to see this. I had never ever heard about killer whales before. It was something new to me, and we sat up on a hillside, not far from the Captain Whidbey Inn, if you know where that is, where the Madrona Road connects up with the Highway 20. And was sat on a hill and watched the workings of this group corralling these orcas together. And the only thing I really remember from that, and it didn't really play a big part because, they were killer whales. We weren't there with any sensitive feelings about orcas like we have today. And so I looked at that, but the sound that came up was like babies crying, a huge amount of them, and just this sound was coming out of there. And I left shortly after that and forgot about it until in the 1990s, I decided that I would become a beach watcher. And I joined the Beach Watchers under the leadership of some woman named Susan Berta. And Susan was very involved, and I became very active for several years with Beach Watchers. And then all of a sudden, she started to take another interest. She started bringing up this whale that was in captivity in Miami. And I was thinking, oh wow, that was really interesting. So I started thinking about that. I started hearing from Susan's stories. And all of a sudden, one of our leaders from up above in the state offices said, I don't know who, whether she wrote to Susan or whatever, but this person said, hey, you can't do that. You're in charge of beach watching. That is too political for you to do. And that's what I remember. I don't know if that's the truth, but that's what I remember. And not soon after that, Susan was off on her own. And I became less involved with beach watching. Not that I didn't still respect the group and think that they were doing a great job. But here was Susan who was doing that. So this was now in the 90s. And I started hearing these stories, and one night I was sleeping, and I woke up, and this melody was in my mind, and I started thinking about it, and then words started to come into play. And I got up in the middle of the night, and I wrote down that melody, and I wrote down the words that I had, and I started working on it. I worked on it for quite a while, and then I decided, hey, this is a good song, this is fun. So I took it to my students at school, and I taught it. I was an elementary music teacher, and I taught to these students at Olympic View Elementary, and they loved it. We started singing, and another friend of mine teaching there was a woman named Sandy Pease, and I shared it with her, and she wanted me to teach it to her kids, so I taught it to her kids. Then all of a sudden, the whole district became interested in it, and that's how that song got going. And it became a special thing for that school. So then when I decided to go on and teach it to all of us, we sang it everywhere. Karl and I probably have sung together that song probably hundreds of times in different places. And Deb with us too. Yeah, Deb was with us also. And to me that was a very, very special song for me. And I'm not a real composer. I don't really do that. That's not my thing. But I do usually for some special occasions. One in particular I remember was they were deciding Canada was wanting to build an oil pipeline across Canada's waters so they could ship it overseas, the oil. And they couldn't get the permission of the Canadian authorities to do that. So they came to the state of Washington and they mapped out this place where they would get the oil to Port Angeles, then they'd take a pipeline and run it across Puget Sound, over to Whidbey Island, and across Whidbey Island, across Camano Island, and then up to Anacortes where they could refine this oil. So there was going to be a big meeting up in Olympia, and that meeting was supposed to be very special, and it was going to be where they could make it. But when we got there, we found out that we could not, nobody could speak. It was only the authorities there. We were going to listen to everything. Well, I had put down, just for a joke, words to the Canadian national anthem, and changed it over to, "Oh Canada, go pump your own crude oil. We will be vowed, our island you'll not spoil, nor the peninsula, or Puget Sound, or Camano Island too. Oh Canada, this pledge we make to you." And I brought up all my friends from Green Bank, which was supposed to go across Green Bank. We got up and we sang that on a break. There was total silence at Oak Harbor High School where this was held. And it ended. Somehow, that was the end of their efforts. I don't know if we did it, but I'll take some credit. So, anyway, it's good. But now, my song, Home Lolita, is a little outdated. We can't bring her home anymore. But my sister-in-law, Deb Lund, and Karl Olsen, so the sister-in-law, she has taken the words and changed them over and made it more up to date. And we'd like to do that for you.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
have time. No, this is the updated version that Deb worked on the lyrics for. Of
This-
Home
this is-
Lolita.
This is closer to Vern's original sonnet than what you'll hear from the Shifty Sailors.
This one is. So it's the one on the,
Well, this one on the other side though.
on the right side.
Oh,
It's that one, it's no.
That,
It's
there you
that
go,
one.
perfect.
No.
All right. Can't see it over there. In 1970, in a cove called Berta, just off Whidbey Island, you were 6 years old then.
Her legacy.
your spirit out there.
Now it's about her legacy, right?
Yeah.
Closing remarks, somebody?
You still want to recall?
Well, I don't want it to be the honor. I'll read it because it's not a very large crowd and I'll do it.
No, just
Okay.
come here.
I'm conscious. So I'm Martha from Kitsap County and I've just on the peripheral of all of this for over the years. And I did meet Howard and Susan a number of years ago. I think I was never a tree hugger or an environmentalist, but I think that you know, I studied Native American studies and became enraptured by the culture, the storytelling, and all these things, and I started to understand about everything, the Orca, the salmon, the Pacific Northwest, where I was born and raised. Anyway, in 2019, I started, I don't know what triggered hearing about Tokitae, but it just came into my life more and more and more. And I went on one of the Penn Cove in 2019, August. The Orca Network does these tributes to the Cove. And I went, and it didn't even hit me till I was out of there, what I had just experienced. Again, the storytelling. I mean, Susan plays someone, a native tribe, I don't know who the people are, but they gave her a flute. She plays it beautifully. It was such an experience. The cedar reeds laid, just all the depth and meaning, and the hope that Toki would come home. I just was enthralled by it. Anyway, so I'm just Joe, person from Remembrance, Kitsap County. I brought my friend LeBray with me because I just keep being drawn to this effort. And I just want to thank you, gentlemen, because my father played the accordion for 70 years before he passed away. And if it still was here, it would be my dad and I playing the guitar, just like that. So that was so charming and special. But at the end of that event, the next night, this little poem, and I'm not a writer, but a little
Yes, you are.
I got people who write. This little poem is very short, but I'll share it with you because I feel like I have to share it. I don't know why I wrote it, but it's what I felt, and I was compelled to write this. It just came pouring out of me, which is weird when you're not a writer. And unfortunately, she's not here with us now, but she really is. She really is. Let's face it. Look at all the lives she's changed. Look at the food journals changed. Look at what we're doing in the Pacific Northwest with the Orca Task Force and the boating laws, and their work continues, and all of you, so it's great. So this is just, oh, okay. So I'll share it. It's simply called Tokitae. 1,000 tears ago, I heard your name. A million grieving waves bemoan their frozen flame. Black masts move silently through the north winds as the deep pines its outstretched feathered fins. O brave heart of iron will, you do belong to home, our pledge to not prolong. May fortitude reward your stolen sovereignty, as midnight blues of solitude are pardon free. When finally aching bones breach the barren concrete walls, in ancient waters shall you hunt with dignity the final call, and once again dance to the whitecap's song. May Salish salt heal this sacred wrong.
Beautiful.
Share it in the hope of Toki's legacy and all of our Orca friends and all of you as well. I'm honored to be with all of you today. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. And I remember sitting with you on the boat and I just making a connection with you and it just people are so touched by Toki and that I remember when she died and we were all so shocked because it was in those months we were getting, daily, weekly updates on her health after years of not knowing at all what was going on. And so for, all these years of just always waiting for that call and, you know, expecting her to be gone, it really caught us off guard that she was gone. And so we were really in shock. And I remember kind of half jokingly saying to Howie, you know, she brought us together. Our words and but just feeling that whole, you know, I mean, she was such a part of our lives, and knowing, I mean, it's got to be thousands, not tens of thousands of people all over the world who, over the last 25 years or more, 28, that through those years that we've become friends with or acquaintances or worked with or knew that whose lives were changed by her. And it just shook all of our worlds, and not knowing what was going to happen then, besides just the deep pain and grief we were all feeling, and anger and frustration because we still don't know really what happened. But what was so shocking is what happened. You know, okay? But it was a good thing that everyone became so inspired by her. And it was like her spirit was so, always so full of grace and love, no matter what they did to her, and no matter how bad her conditions got. She was always, well, except to, what was the one trainer she really didn't like it. I love when she wasn't nice to him. But to most people, she was just full of grace and love, and just had this good spirit. And I think she's, you know, those who really loved her and got her still feel her spirit within us. And I really, you know, that thing that makes all of J-Pod just suddenly show up out of nowhere when Ralph is having a ceremony for J6 and his sister reaches 6 times exactly when he's talking about her brother passing. You know, that thing, you know, enables her spirit to be in us. And everyone felt that. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps right now. And I really do think she still is in us. And that just motivated people. I mean, instantly everybody was like, we really have to bring more salmon for her family. We need to fight to bring the dams in. We need to make sure her family is cared for. And I was just so inspired and shocked that happened immediately. And that's what, you know, what Toki's legacy is that she has instilled that in us, her spirit, and you know, she was such an example to us all. And if we can hold that in us and take care of her family now, that's the best we can do.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I would really like to invite anybody else who
Well,
wants to share.
there's a quote that I heard a long time ago that was spoken by Chief Seattle. And Chief Seattle said, there is no death, only a changing of roles. And so we have to remember that. She is still here. She's home, where we will all be one day. So just remember that. It's all love. And she loves all of you. And what you've done, I'm a Pisces, I cry. Oh, that's so sorry. But what you guys do is so special. I've been wanting to come here forever, and I finally made it in California, so I'm going to be coming from now on. But you guys are all awesome. And what a doll you are. Oh my goodness, I'm doing Berta and thinking about it. That's so awesome.
what you say, and I wish, we had hoped some of our tribal elder friends who helped us through these last years could be here, and one is at the Friday Harbor Film Festival, had a film showing about Toki, and another has been ill. But, you know, that is the thing, they are, you know, their belief is they, you know, orcas are our ancestors, their ancestors. And I really do believe that in the way that the southern residents acted when Toki was dying. Her spirit was with them, and she did come home, and she joined them, and they knew it. They knew it before any of us knew it.
But you know what they have is kind of weird? I love when camera tires, I love all these word campgrounds and stuff. I frequent the ones of the whale sites, either San Juan someplace or British Columbia. But I was watching this site looking for whales, and it's super bright outside, there's not a cloud in the sky, and the water is just pristine blue. And out of the middle of nowhere, this little cloud appears. What's that? Out of the middle of nowhere, it comes down into a circle. And as it comes down, something comes out of the circle. And the circle is where, I have it in my phone if you want to see. I couldn't go on what I was watching. But something came out of the circle, and it was wearing a gown. It's wearing white, and has a gold, blue and a gold sash. There's a crown on its head, that is the cloud that it came out of. And there's a, what do you call it, like a cloud piercing, looks like an arrow piercing the heart of this creature, and it starts to move. And I'm not hallucinating, I don't do any drugs or anything. The strongest thing I have is an but it starts to move. You can see it on the film, the gown is moving and it's looking at something, but it's in this whale sanctuary. So I don't tell people where it is because a friend of mine shared it with some Catholic priests, and they want to go down there and see what's going on. Well, you can't because it's like the middle of nowhere. But you want to keep it pristine. You want to let the orcas and the whales come here. This is their place. We shouldn't, you know, put ourselves over there. But it's fascinating. So I have it in my phone. If anybody wants to see it, pardon me, I'm not doing it fairly soon, but it's really, really neat. So I've been looking ever since. I haven't seen it, but I couldn't believe what I was watching. There was two other people online at the same time, and I was like, anybody see this? Anybody? They just had their computers on, but it was fascinating. So I was like, ooh. Yeah. Anyway, that's what happened. When was that? It was in March, and I want to say it was at least maybe a year or a year and a half ago. Yeah, it was fascinating. But I've had a lot of weird stuff happen in my lifetime. I'm a librarian from Santa Barbara. I was retired. I used to be a ghost in my office, and used to hug me. So I have a picture there. So I had really weird stuff. Yeah, it was kind of cool. Yeah. But I kind of had enough. You know?
Anyone else have stories they would like to share?
They're going to bring a little building screaming way back.
People heard what happened with the pods while Toki was dying.
Shall
I want to hear that story.
Yeah, please.
This is a mystical story too. I still don't understand it. It still blew me away. And I can't explain it, but, all right, this was Thursday, August, let's see.
Well, just
The day before she died, in 2023, and I was sitting in a bank office trying to resolve some estate funding things. Anyway, they were on the phone to the head office for a half an hour. So I pick up my phone and I read that, oh, there's orcas at the Lamkill Lighthouse webcam. So I tune in and I'm watching, and the behaviors were just really, really strange. I've been, observing orcas since the early 80s, and, they've got their modes of being, of living, of traveling, of foraging, of socializing, of, doing a lot of things, but this was not any of those. This was a kind of, it was kind of a slow motion, kind of individualistic, although they're pretty close together, but they weren't in unison. They were just all just kind of moving slow, a few little spy hops, some kind of just laying there. There was one that was just kind of logging, but then snapped his jaws for a while, his or her, I don't remember. But, you know, things that I had never seen before, and they were there the entire half hour. Well, it turns out they had actually gotten there about an hour earlier, and they stayed for another hour or so after that. So for about at least 2.5 hours, they were in that exact same location, kind of writhing and swirling around. Yeah, I just can't explain it without attributing some emotion. But the emotion that I thought of was grief. They seemed to be having a kind of emotional pain of some kind, but I had no idea what it was. And it wasn't until the next day that we got the news that Toki died. And well, for one thing, you know, they came in from the ocean. We hadn't seen them for months. And they came in from the ocean, and they did that series of behaviors right under the lighthouse. And I'm not saying they knew there was a webcam and that people were watching. I don't know about that. But all I could say is, in all sincerity, they sure acted like they knew what was going on in Miami. That Toki was in her last days, her body had failed, she was going to die. She knew it, and they seemed to know it. I can't give any other explanation that I don't know how they would know, but it sure seems like they were in touch with her. So that's still a revelation to me that I've not sorted out. I don't know how that could possibly happen, but you know, the correlation is there, the facts are there. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
And then Rosie James, one of our Salish elders that we work with, we talked to her the next day, and she hadn't seen that, and I don't think she even knew about that happening, or what happened the next day when Elpod was there, and Ocean's son, who we believe to be her mother, had kind of gone off by herself. And then the young calves in the group were together and kind of playing. And then Ocean's son was off by herself. And they hung around the day that Toki died. And we were talking to Rosie right after that. And she was talking to us about that the Orcas would go through the grieving, similar to what the tribe's protocol would be. And well, first she said that she knew that, she said Toki was with her family as before she died, that her spirit went to her family, and that she was with her family before she died. And that was before she knew that they were acting so weird the day before she died. And she said Toki went home before she died. Her spirit was with her family. And then she said that when they die, they do like we do, and the elders will go off, in another room a corner and be by themselves and just sit and be quiet, and the children will play together, and, you know, but the elders will, when they're quiet, just sit and grieve. And that's exactly what they saw Alcott doing the next day when she died. And Rosie wasn't, you know, she wasn't watching the sightings or out there seeing that at all. She, you know, but she's very tuned in to the whales and, you know, the whale culture and the native culture, and it was just really interesting. And I know Karina was watching that on the webcam also. I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you'd like to share anything.
I mean, we were watching it on the webcam and we were all commenting on how strange it was.
Take a hot mess. We were just like, what is going on? And they were there for what, 3 hours or something? It was
About 3 hours.
It was a long time.
Yeah, we had been watching them for a while and we were just remarking on how strange their behaviors were and like what's up with them and what's going on with them, and we were all like, we figured something had happened within their group, and it did. We just didn't know, but yeah, it was not the kind of, we were hoping for something, you know, nice. That wasn't nice, but that Toki was able to come home like that, because it's pretty obvious that that's what had happened, just because those behaviors, I mean, we've spent lots and lots and lots of time watching the webcam of my film and the various webcams, and I mean, we've seen, I mean, combined with the stuff that I've watched from Ingrid, and like the different behaviors of whales elsewhere in the world, I've not seen anything like that, ever. So, it was a unique set of behaviors, and they were, I don't know. I feel strange to describe them a feeling. I don't feel like I should tell them what their feeling is. They had a feeling going on. It was definitely noteworthy. It was definitely something that I don't think we can actually understand, if I'm being honest. Because they are way more in tune with things than we are. So, yeah.
Yeah. It made me feel better knowing, because I felt like she was with them. You know, I felt like she did come home.
Yeah.
You know, in a different way, but that her family knew, and that she was with them in some way.
Yeah, it was definitely a net positive. It was just, it's sad but also good for the whales, and they seemed okay with everything, and Toki seemed okay with everything, so.
Yeah. She's not in that day.
Right.
Yeah.
Now she's swimming across possession sound every day.
Have we completed the program?
Anybody else have anything they want to share?
Well, there's one last